Thank you for the invitation to this amazing workshop. So I'll be describing. So the main result of this talk is going to be joint work with Ankit Gupta, Pritish Kamath, Neeraj Kayal, and yours truly. So the result is going to be a similar simulation result of simulating any polynomial that's computed by a small arithmetic circuit by a very shallow circuit of not too large size. So if degree D poly F size S, then there is a depth 3 circuit computing F of size S to the order square root D. Okay, and here something that will be important is that computing F over a field like Q or any characteristic zero field. Okay. Actually the thing was, when the result was first shown, it was in 3 steps, but subsequent to the result there was a result by Tavenes which improved step 1. So, but I'm going to sort of just state it the way it is. So just to put this in perspective with what we have seen so far, earlier results were the whole series with VSBR, Agarwal, Vinay, Koiran, Tavenes, and so on basically said the same thing, where here you had a depth 4 circuit and the size was the same. So this basically says that you can squash the depth even further. So the proof of this result is going to be rather short. So instead of just giving you what the proof is, what I should instead try to do is, basically to me this is evidence to suggest that depth 3 circuits are crazy. Okay, so what I will instead try to do is I'll rant about depth 3 circuits and and give you as many properties of this as possible to try and convince, to sort of give some hint about what you can do and what you can't do and so on. And but more specifically, I want to give a proof of this in the way that led Ankit to make this conjecture that it is possible that arbitrary circuits could reduce to depth 3 circuits. And this is in spirit to what Amir Yehudeev presented in his survey, and also the way Ankit presented his talk, that it's a way in which the quest for stronger lower bounds for arithmetic circuits led to structural results of this sort. Okay, so I'm going to do it in the context of saying, here are the lower bounds that we know of depth 4 circuits, I want to improve them, and let's see what we get in the process of it. Okay, and so I've stated the result, but I'll probably be coming back to this towards the end of the talk.
You want directly closed or not?
No, I won't. Yeah, so I'll certainly present the proof over C, and depending on how much time I have, I'll also tell you how to make this work over Q as well. Okay, so let's recap on let's do a recap on depth 4 lower bounds. This basically said that a circuit model that we can just focus all our attention on. Okay, one of the circuit models that we could focus all our attention on could be this. I'm going to forget the order that is going to hang around here, but anyway, so the just depth 4 circuits, where the homogeneous depth 4 circuits where the bottom fanons are bounded by square root D. Okay, and rather, okay, any n to the little omega square root d LB would yield super poly general circuit LB. Okay, and what we know, current state of affairs is that there are explicit polys with a lower bound of square root d. And so an example of, the easiest polynomial for which we can show a lower bound of this much was described in the morning by Srikanth, which was joint work with these people. So this is what we know. And now let's just focus, let's just say that, okay, now my goal is going to be just to try and beat this n to the capital omega square root d to n to the small omega square root d. And I just want to see if there are any structural results that I can use for this and so on. So before I do this, okay, let me just spend a little amount of time to sort of suggest that when we reduce a general circuit to a depth 4 circuit, the size that we obtain is like n to the order. Now, n to the order square root d is still exponential. But why is this useful in our setting? And this is a question that we should ask ourselves, because the moment you reduce to a smaller model, a good question to ask yourself is what we expect the right answer to be. What sort of lower bound do you expect to prove in a depth 4 circuit of such a sort? Okay, and in my opinion, the right answer is supposed to be 2 to the omega n or 2 to the omega d. It should be like purely exponential in d, not exponential in root d or something. Okay, once you have that in mind, then a blow up of n to the order square root d is sort of, it's okay. It still says that if you are going to prove what is the right thing, then you haven't lost much. Okay, in similar spirit, now you can go on to say what I am gunning for is a lower bound of something better than n to the root d. So I must be allowed to do some modifications which incur a blow up of n to the order square root d. If my goal is going to be to try and prove better lower bounds, a blow up of n to the order square root d is okay. It's perfectly understandable. Okay. So the first thing is let's try to simplify sigma pi square root d. What time did I start? 5:25 or something, is it? Okay. Yeah. Sorry? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, what does a sigma pi square root d circuit look like? It looks like something of the form I equals 1 through s and qi1 through something like qi square root d, where this is at most square root d. Okay, this is what a circuit looks like, and we saw how to prove lower bounds for such classes by using the shifted partials and so on. Now, if one were to start thinking about how to prove lower bounds here, you might want to make some simplifications just to see, okay, can I prove lower bounds for this simpler class, and somehow lift it and so on. And one natural simplification is that instead of multiplying several QIs, you could now have QI power square root d. Okay, maybe this is like possibly a slightly easier class to just build intuition to try and prove lower bounds here. Now the first step here is that you can actually go from here to here without much loss. So let me quantify let me quantify that in a minute. And so, are there any questions? I mean, is the goal and what I'm trying to do? Okay. Okay. And so this is a rather simple reduction. And let's look at a case when, suppose you have two polynomials P and Q, but I'm somehow sort of, I have a fetish towards squares of polynomials rather than multiplying two distinct polynomials. So one thing that I can try to do is just express this as P plus Q the whole square minus P minus Q the whole square, and I guess there is a 4 or something that comes here. So, right, so this is a natural way by which I can just take a product of polynomials and replace it by linear combinations of squares instead of computing distinct polynomials. Now, nothing is going to stop me at 2. So you can do the same thing for even PQR, where, okay, so, and I mean, you can imagine what this is going to look like. You're going to get a lot more terms and so on, but you can eventually cancel things off. So let's just write down in general that suppose you have Z1 through Zm, this can be written in the form, you take, okay, so instead of just writing it, let's try to derive the way it's going to be written. I want to do this just using higher powers of a single of several linear polynomials. So let's start with one that gives me this monomial. Okay, one guy that gives me this monomial is you just take Z1 through Zm, raise this to the power m. So this certainly gives me this monomial with some constant that appears here. With some constant that appears here, but there are a lot of these other sort of bad monomials that are there, which I now need to eliminate. Now, what are these other bad monomials? I am interested in only those monomials that depend on m distinct variables, all the m variables. But this guy generates a lot of other monomials which depend on m minus 1 or fewer variables. So what I can do is I can run over all possible sets of size m minus 1 and look at summation Zi where I is in S and raise this power m. So the contribution of all monomials that depend on exactly m minus 1 variables is the same in the first term and the second term. So those guys are going to get cancelled off, but of course you're going to subtract some other things twice and yada yada yada. So this can be written as you sum over all S in 1 through m, and you look at summation Zi where I is in S, raise this power m, but then you do a minus 1 power m minus cardinality S or something. Okay, it's just inclusion exclusion by considering which columns there are then. And this equation, so it can be got from a lot of things. So so one can think of it as an application of Reiser's formula, which I'll describe at some point. And I think this also appeared in one of Amir's papers. And it's also attributed to, I mean, this specific equation is attributed to Fisher, and it's just inclusion exclusion. It's a rather simple identity which will probably, okay. So now let's see. So I just want to apply that in this setting. Okay. Here I have a product of square root d polynomials. I have some product of square root d polynomials, and I just want to replace every product by such a sum. Okay. It seems a bit stupid because the set S runs over all possible subsets of 1 through n, so there are exponentially many. But the point I want to keep in mind is that I'm going to apply it with m equals square root d. I'm just going to take a product of square root d polynomials, so I'm just multiplying square root d of those guys. So let me state this as a lemma. Any sigma pi square root d circuit can be simulated by sigma. I'll write this wedge to sort of denote an exponentiation. So you're just going to take something and raise it to some root dth power, sigma pi. Oh yeah, square root d. Yes. Okay, that will be pointless. Okay, the square root d of size s times 2 to the order square root d. Okay, so I'm just doing this gate by gate. It's an extremely syntactic way in which I'm just writing every product using that form. So eventually each of the zi's are going to be replaced by the qij's, which are degree square root d polynomials. And because everything on the right hand side is like linear combination of degree square root d polynomials, this bottom finance still continues to remain degree square root d, because I'm just taking linear combinations of them. Yeah. 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 Okay. Okay, so that's what this is. Okay. Now, so we saw one. So in some sense, okay, let me just write this to say that this is a sort of gadget reduction that takes a product of Fanon M to a sigma power sigma, where this Fanon is still, this is still M, and this is like 2 to the M. You can think of this as just a gadget reduction that just converts every product gate to a gate of this form. What this lemma says is that I can do that on this product gate. Now, of course, the same thing can also be done to this product gate, because I'm going to incur just the same loss, right? So I'm just going to rewrite this lemma to say that this guy is also square root d sigma. It will become 2 to the twice root d or something, and I'm just going to absorb that inside. Okay? So this says that any sigma pi sigma can be converted to the seemingly easier looking circuit, sigma power, the depth 5 powering circuits, and you don't really lose much because the sort of lower bound you're gunning for is much larger. So you haven't lost much at all. Okay? So, or an n to the little omega root d lower bound for sigma power sigma, this being square root d, this being square root d, yields a general circuit lower bound. That's just the contrapositive of this, because we knew that a lower bound of n to the little omega square root d here would yield general circuit lower bounds, and this lemma basically says that a lower bound of that much for this model will of course translate to this, which hence translates to general circuits. Okay, so okay, great. So this basically says that this is a good model to try and work with. Okay, and okay, so for now, okay, so now let me switch gears and start my rant about depth 3 circuits, because yeah. So if you get a lower bound of say n to the root d times f of n, or I used f, so say j of n. It's a bad thing, but anyway, some j of n. Then the lower bound you will get for general circuits is like n to the order j. Whatever factor you get more than square root d, that will appear as the exponent in general circuits. So this is the way it is. So which means that no, as long as j is like super constant, you're going to get some super polynomial lower bound. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So now let me switch gears and talk about depth 3 circuits. Now, okay, but before I get there, let me just point out that this over large characteristic fields. Because the point is, n factorial, if the characteristic was small, it would become 0. And therefore, this proof, of course, says that 0 is equal to 0 or something, which is useful. Huh? Oh, sorry, this is m factorial, sorry. This won't give anything important. In fact, more generally, it's not just that this proof doesn't work over low characteristic field, it's just that this can't be true over low characteristic fields. Okay? So basically the point is, if I want to write x times y as some combination of a times x plus, ai times x plus bi times y, the whole squared, where I goes from whatever. Okay? Just imagine being in F2, where the characteristic is just 2. Then the right hand side is just going to be summation ai squared x squared plus bi squared y squared. Because the other cross terms, they cancel out, right? So which means that the right hand side is never going to generate a mixed monomial at all. So you can't hope to write xy as a sum of powers. So this conversion, the way it is stated, is false. It's false over F2. And yeah, so basically you will never, okay, so let me, so you want to write what as what? So the thing is, if you have a sum of cubes, x plus, yeah. So the point is, no matter which guy you're going to take, let's say this guy cube, over F2, this is going to be x squared plus y squared plus a squared times x plus y plus a. So you're never going to get an xy term. Okay, so that's one way of looking at this. Yeah. Okay, so we'll revisit this thing that the trick that I mentioned. Basically, the moral is that the trick that I mentioned, one has to keep the underlying field in picture, and none of the earlier lower bounds that we have seen actually should. An exception is it's the homogeneous depth 4 lower bound that Chandan described. But so the proof of that lower bound uses the fact that the field is 0 characteristic, but hopefully it should work over anything because the measure seems to be powerful enough for that. Okay, anyway, this was that aside. So let's now go to what can so let's just try to understand how powerful are these depth 3 circuits. Okay. So the depth 3 circuit is just a circuit that looks like a sum of the form Li1 through Lid. Maybe I should put a capital D here, just to denote that this D need not have anything to do with the degree of the polynomial you're computing. Okay? Yeah, just some parameter. It's a sum of product of linear polynomials. Okay? So let me just state what are the low bounds known. Okay, this we have seen earlier, and one of the things I think that we saw multiple times was this lower bound of Lisan-Wigderson, that if capital D is equal to degree of the polynomial that you're computing, then even a polynomial like determinant, I'll use the determinant just to keep D as the degree of whatever I'm working with. The D cross D determinant requires 2 to the omega D size. This was one thing that we saw, right? And another thing was, so this is for homogeneous, this is for homogeneous, and there was a result of Grigoriev and Karpinski which gave 2 to the omega n, 2 to the omega d lower bound for sigma pi, sigma computing d over a fixed finite field. That is, the size of the field will feature as the constant that is sticking around here. So once you fix your field to be some field like say F3 or F7 or whatever, that will then Grigoriev-Karpinski basically say that any circuit, any depth-3 circuit that computes the determinant. Here, this doesn't assume anything about homogeneity. It could be not homogeneous. Like the capital D could be much larger than small d. But Grigoriev-Karpinski basically says that if this circuit computes the determinant over a finite field or some fixed finite field, then the size of the circuit must be very large. Okay, and over, let's say, characteristic 0, only omega d squared lower bound known, and this is by Špilka and Wigderson. Yeah, so this is what is known about. Any other questions? So the
first bullet, capital D is small d.
yeah, that is the degree of f is. Okay, this was yeah. So this is what is known. Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Okay. So this is what is known about depth-3 circuits, and over characteristic 0, the best result that was known was just slightly more than like linear. And it was also one of these things where depth-3 circuits is one where the underlying field seems to make a difference. Okay, and in the way the lower bound proofs went and so on. Now these are the lower bounds that are known. Now let's first try and ask: are there things that depth-3 circuits can do? In some surprising manners and so on. And just to sort of build a contrast between the Boolean world and the arithmetic world, so it's sort of well known that the majority function is not in constant depth Boolean circuit. If you don't know what this means, forget about it. Okay, anyway, so yeah. Now an analog, so the majority function is basically 1 whenever there are at least n/2 1s in the input. You can think of the analog in the arithmetic world as an n-variate polynomial where there is one monomial for every subset of size n/2. Okay, so yeah. I'll just use this notation to mean that it's all n/2 size subsets over there. Okay, and this also has a name which we have seen earlier, and it's called the elementary symmetric polynomial, and you can throw this the degree of the symmetric polynomial as a subscript just to denote what it is. Okay, and so in fact, if Nissan-Wigderson also showed any homogeneous sigma pi sigma circuit computing some k requires n to the omega k size. Okay, so it says lower bound that they had for the determinant for homogeneous depth-3, you can also translate the same thing for sigma pi sigma circuits, homogeneous sigma pi sigma circuits computing this. But surprisingly, if you are yeah, this is characteristic independent. Okay, but surprisingly, if you are allowed to go to larger degrees, then there is a really efficient circuit that computes the symmetric polynomial. Okay, and this is a trick of Benor, and it illustrates a very an extremely important concept, I believe, in general arithmetic circuit, especially when you're dealing with non-homogeneity. Okay, and let me describe this very slowly. I'm sure a lot of, it was also described briefly in Amir Shpilka's survey, but I'll go over it carefully just so that I'll just go over it slowly because I also have lots of time. Okay, so here is Benor's trick. So what I want to do is I want to compute this polynomial. Instead of computing the polynomial as is, what I'm instead going to do is I'm going to add one extra variable, and I'm going to do something simple that makes this polynomial stick in as one of the coefficients. Okay, and one way to do this is to just look at the polynomial which is okay. I'm just going to take this product of linear polynomials, and it's not, it's trivial to see that this is nothing but the product of the coefficient of z to the I is going to be the symmetric polynomial of degree n minus I. Okay, so now what I want to do is, to me it's like this polynomial px of z is easy to compute because it's just a product of linear polynomials. Now what I'm interested in is pulling out one coefficient. Okay, and this general trick is just called interpolation. Okay, and let's just see what happens in this process. So it just says that if you think of this as a univariate polynomial in Z, then given sufficiently many evaluations of Px of Z, you can actually pull out any linear combination of the coefficients, in particular any of the coefficients. Okay, so which means if I want to look at Px of Z equals alpha, then this can be thought of as this sort of vector product, which is like 1 alpha squared and so on. Alpha to the, what is the degree here? The degree is n times the coefficients. I'll abuse notations and just call this P0, P1 through Pn. Okay, and I'm just evaluating the polynomial P at alpha, where P0, P1, etc. are the coefficient of the Zi's appropriately. Now, I can do the same thing for several guys. P of alpha n. Let me make it alpha naught to alpha n. And write this as this is alpha naught squared to alpha n. Times that. So you just get a sort of matrix vector equation which says that this sort of familiar matrix multiplied by just the coefficient vector is the set of evaluations. Okay, and of course if I choose distinct values alpha 1 through alpha n, I'm going to assume that my field is large enough where I can choose distinct values for this. If I can choose distinct values of this, then this basically means that this matrix here is invertible. So I can throw it on the other side. Okay, so it's going to say that some matrix B times P of alpha naught to P of alpha n, this is going to be the coefficient vectors. Okay, so, and since this is a matrix of scalars, the inverse is going to be just some scalar matrix. It's a bunch of scalars from the field. Okay, so in particular, if I want the n by 2th coefficient, then I just need to take the n by 2th row of B and multiply by this vector. So it basically says that sim n by 2 is going to be, I'm just going to call them some beta I, beta I P of alpha I. Okay, so just writing it down, and let's just expand what P of alpha I is. This guy is going to be beta I times alpha I plus x1 alpha I plus xn. Okay, where xi goes from what? 0 to n, I guess. Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Okay. And this basically is an n squared size depth-3 circuit that computes the elementary symmetric polynomial. Okay. And the key point here is that the degree, the formal degree of this circuit is n, whereas the degree of the symmetric polynomial you were computing was n by 2. Okay. And just by allowing you to go to a slightly larger degree, you're suddenly able to compute this polynomial which looks like the analog of the majority function in the arithmetic world. Okay?
What?
Yeah. So that's a lower bound for homogeneous sigma pi sigma circuits. So that would say that if you want to compute the n by 2 symmetric polynomial, you are not allowed to multiply more than n by 2 linear polynomials together. Okay? But here, this is a non-homogeneous circuit in the sense that if the product gates are multiplying much larger than n by 2 polynomials. Okay? Yeah. So let me give you another example of something which a sigma pi sigma circuit can do, which is it still surprises me that this can be done, and this was something that I alluded to earlier, which is called Reiser's formula. Okay, and it's very similar to what we saw there, and it's suppose you want to compute the permanent of an n cross n matrix. I'm not going to give you a poly-size circuit for it. Sigma pi sigma circuits aren't that cool, but I'll tell you something that you can do substantially better than just writing it as a sum of monomials. The sum of monomial representation would have size n factorial. Okay. So I'm just going to write down the formula because the proof is similar and it's an exercise for people if you want. Okay, this is again going to be S over all subsets of 1 through n, and this is a product over all I equals 1 through n, and xij times minus 1 power n. Okay, so let me just sort of say it out loud what is happening. So I'm going to run over all sets S and think of these sets as being like this. I'm going to choose a set of columns of the matrix, and I'm just going to add up every row with only these columns, all the entries in just these columns of every row, multiply them all together. And I'm going to throw in some plus 1 minus 1 here and there, and I claim that this guy is some constant factor of the permanent. Okay? And this is called Reiser's formula, and this was, if I remember right, this is 63 or something. Okay? And anyway, so this circuit has almost every sort of nice property you could think of. It's homogeneous because its degree is just n. Okay, it's multilinear because there's no guy that occurs as a. Is there any question? Okay, yeah. It's homogeneous. It's multilinear because there are going to be no squares because you're going to multiply distinct rows. And in fact, it's not just multilinear; it's self-multilinear because any product term is a linear polynomial in the first row, second row, and so on. So in fact, it has every damn nice property that you can think of, and it gives you a circuit of size like 2 to the order n for the n cross n permanent. Okay, and surprisingly, no analog for the determinant was known. Okay, I mean, like this was one of these weird examples. mean, depth 3 homogeneous was one of the weird models where the best known circuit for the permanent was smaller than the best known circuit for the determinant. Because the determinant, we couldn't do anything better than just merely writing it as a sum of monomials. Okay, and yeah, so this was another log. Okay, so now let's say, suppose you want to prove lower bounds for depth 3 non-homogeneous circuits. Let's try to see how one can prove lower bounds. Okay. Okay. Now I have a polynomial f which has degree d, but it can, suppose this was written as li1 through li capital D, where d is probably much larger. Okay. Okay. To just make my life easier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to think of them as 1 plus li1, 1 plus lid. Okay. I'm just going to slightly think of it this way. And now this guy is a polynomial of degree d. Okay. So any expression of this sort says that if you collect all the degree d polynomials together, okay, then that polynomial is going to amount to f. Somehow magically all the other degree terms are going to cancel off. Okay. So let's just trust that for now and try to, okay, and just try to look at the degree d part of the right hand side and pull that out and see what we get there. Okay. So assume that each of the lij's that I've written here, they are homogeneous. Okay. So this implies that, you know, so how do I pull out the degree d polynomial, degree d component of this? The degree d component of this is basically all possible products of lij1 through lij small d that I can take, because on all the other terms I'm supposed to take 1, 1, 1 in order to get a degree d term. Okay, and if you just think about this, this is nothing but the symmetric polynomial of degree d applied on li1 through li capital D. So that is going to be the homogeneous degree d component. Okay, sorry. I mean this f should be equal to this. Okay, so that's what you get out of this. So here is a model. Now let's try to, again, we want to prove lower bounds on this model. So now what we can try to do is let's try to simplify this model further and try and see if we can get anything out of this. Okay. Now,
The degree d part of f is this.
yeah, because f is the degree d part of the left hand side is f, because I'm assuming f is homogeneous. The degree d part of the right hand side is this guy. So therefore this guy should be equal to f if such a thing is true. Okay. So now
There's no need to sigma there.
no, this is for just one term, right? There are like several such terms. So this is a sum of let's say j equals 1 through s. Oh, I saw I and I got scared. Yeah. Okay, and yeah, so you just want to pull out this part here, and here's something which is rather cool. It's attributed to Newton, called Newton identities. Okay, in a nutshell, it says this. So you look at all polynomials that you can generate by taking these polynomials, multiplying them together, adding them up, and so on. Look at the algebra generated by these guys. I'm just looking at all possible combinations of these guys, and it says that this is exactly equal to the combinations of these, what I would like to call these power symmetric polynomials. Okay, where I put capital D here. Okay, it's just you're going to raise every guy to the ith power. Okay, and so this is a useful fact to know. And let me just try to tell you how you can write any symmetric polynomial using just those guys. Okay. So the symmetric polynomial of degree 1 is nothing but the power polynomial of degree 1. Okay. Now suppose I want to compute the symmetric polynomial of degree 2. What do? You take the power 1 polynomial, raise square it, which is like saying you are taking summation xi, squaring it, and you just subtract off p2. I mean, okay, great. What do you do for this? You're going to take power 1 and raise it to the cube. And now I want to collect terms that look like, so there are going to be terms which are like x1 cube terms have cancelled off. And there are going to be some terms of the form xi squared xj. Okay? And if you think about it for a while, this can be written as pow2 into sim1, which is basically pow2. Okay, so these are going to be terms which look like, these are going to be xi squared terms, and there is an xj here. Okay, and plus pow3. Okay, and you can just work it out. Every time you will get some pow1 to the k, and every time this goes down, the degree of the symmetric polynomial will go up. But I've already expressed that as a polynomial over the power sums. You can write that here. Okay, so I'll leave this as an exercise to sort of tell you that symmetric polynomial can be written as okay, ID, okay, with summation. So there's going to be some coefficients. I'm just going to say that it's going to be a linear combination of such products of these power polynomials, and it's a homogeneous expression. That is, if I want the dth symmetric polynomial, I'll just have look at all possible decompositions of d into I1, I2 till ID, and there could be some terms that corresponds to every such partition of small d into capital D parts. Okay, this is an exercise and you can work it out, it's not too hard. Okay, great. So now, okay, what is this guy? This guy looks like a circuit of the form sum of product of sum of powers. Right? So this is what the circuit here looks like. And in fact, if you play around with this again and use the same sort of trick there, you can just replace the product gate that you have by other powers and so on. You can again end up getting a sum of power of sum of powers. Okay, I'm going to hand wave here okay, so there are some things which are a bit tricky here, but anyway, so I'm just going to say that with a little bit of work, you can write it this way. Now, what did we want there? What we wanted there was these dth symmetric polynomials, but those applied on some LIs. So instead of variables x1 through xd, you are not now going to have linear polynomials from L1 through LD. So if I do this for the LIs, all that's going to happen is that there's going to be an additional sigma gate that appears here. The only thing that I have sort of hand waved is that if I start off with a depth 3 circuit of size S, I need to tell you this conversion, what was the blow up that I obtained. Okay, there is a slight variation of Fisher's trick, which basically says that you now get a sigma power sigma of size something like S times if n is the number of variables, is going to be n to the order square root d. Okay. Okay. The reason why you have to do something different than what you have here is that the root d came from the fact that you were multiplying monomials I mean, you are multiplying at most root d monomials together, root d guys together, and that's why the 2 to the root d came from. But here, the number of these power polynomials you have is equal to d. Okay, so I can't incur a loss of 2 to the d here. I want to somehow do better. But you use the fact that whatever I1 through ID that I have, they're going to add up to this small d. Okay, so you just look that, if I have a bunch of guys that add up to small d, I mean, the number of, okay, no, let me not get into it because I think I'm getting, okay, but anyway, so it's not a hard thing, but it's just that you need a slight variant of it to make it work in this case, but you can basically say that you can convert any depth 3 circuit to a sigma pi, because sigma power sigma circuit of s to the, s times this size. Yes. Sorry. Okay, we need. So we also need to say how many such partitions of small d are there, and so Ramanujan has shown that the number of distinct partitions of small d into several elements is bounded by 2 to the order square root d. So just this Shannon itself is going to be 2 to the order square root d, and then conversion of this guy into something of this depth 5 powering circuits is going to incur an n to the order square root d. Okay. Okay. So let's just summarize this to say that okay. So corollary is that if we prove n to the little omega square root d lower bound for sigma power sigma, where these guys are going to be square root d, then you obtain then you I think there's a, let me not put that because it's a bit not what I mentioned. Then you obtain sigma non-homogeneous lower bounds, right? Because I was trying to prove a lower bound on depth 3. Okay. On a depth 3 circuit, and they basically said that I can convert any depth 3 circuit, I can take the dth homogeneous part of the depth 3 circuit, and I can just obtain this by, I can just write that as a sigma power sigma with a blow up of just n to the order square root d, which means if I can prove a lower bound better than n to the order square root d at the sigma power sigma model, then that would mean that I get depth 3 lower bounds. Okay. Okay, so now here are two things that we have. One was that proving a strong enough lower bound for these depth 5 powering circuits are going to yield depth 3 lower bounds. The second thing that we saw here was that if you prove strong enough lower bounds for these depth 5 powering circuits, you actually get general circuit lower bounds. And it was at this point that Ankit made this completely crazy conjecture at that point that no, maybe this is not a coincidence. No, maybe it is the case that general circuits are as powerful, or rather non-homogeneous sigma pi sigma circuits are probably just as powerful as general arithmetic circuits with very similar parameters like n to the order square root d. Okay, so this was the conjecture at that point. Let me just try to mention why something like this just seems crazy. Okay, so one of the things that I mentioned was this Nissan-Wigderson lower bound, which said that determinant or the permanent requires non-homogeneous circuits of such large size. So if you want to compress any general circuit to a depth 3 circuit, this basically says that the only way you can hope to do that is if you start getting non-homogeneous parts in your circuit. You can't hope to come up with such a depth reduction, just takes a homogeneous general circuit and squashes it to a depth 3 circuit which is also homogeneous. This is not possible. That's number one. The second thing is that this says that this cannot work over fixed finite fields, because we already have a lower bound for a determinant which we know is easy to compute. Okay, so determinant, because we know determinant is easy to compute, whatever depth reduction you're trying to do should not work over finite fields. But that's okay, because in the middle we've already used like Fisher's trick twice or thrice or I don't know how much. But and each of these applications, it already we have said that this requires fields of large characteristic and certainly can't be some fixed finite field. Okay, good. So that problem is handled. The third, not really a problem, is that I don't know where that went. So the third thing was that we had this Rice's formula. Is it here? Okay, this is just too. Maybe I've gone this far. I can try. Oh, great. Okay. So there's already Rice's formula, which was a 2 to the order n size circuit for the permanent, and there was no analog for the determinant known. And if a depth reduction, like converting a general circuit to an arithmetic circuit, if such a thing was possible, then this would mean that there is a circuit for the determinant of size n to the square root d, which is much n to the square root n, which is much smaller than 2 to the order square root n. Okay. But anyway, I started off by saying that this is a theorem, so turns out the result is true. And yeah, and so I just need to show the other direction. I need to say how I can start off with. I've already shown that I can start off with any circuit, general circuit, get a depth 5 powering circuit of this sort. I just need to tell you how I can take this depth 5 powering circuit and make a depth 3 circuit without too much blow up. Okay, and there's just one missing link, and that is the duality trick of Saxena. Okay, where do I write? No, this is so. Okay, so before that, maybe I should just write down what a depth 5 powering looks like, because this is too many. Okay, so now this layer, the bottommost sigma layer, is going to compute some linear polynomial. Then it's going to get raised to the power square root d. Then I'm going to add up a few of them. LS, okay, and raise this whole thing to the power square root d. And I'm going to add up several others. Okay, this is what a depth 5 powering circuit looks like. Okay, so far so good. Okay, so now what I will do is that I'll just show that any term of this sort can be written as a sigma pi sigma circuit. Once that is done, it will just, because there's just a summation gate outside, it will mean that the whole thing is also a sigma pi sigma circuit. Okay, and this is like an inverse of Fisher's trick in some sense, and this is by Nitin Saxena. So it states that, so suppose you want to write, let me use again, Z1 plus Z2 plus Zs whole to the, I'll use D here, but think of square root D, that's what is going to get plugged in. So it says that now for every choice of distinct field elements, I'm going to, okay, alpha, I don't know how many of them I need. So for every choice of distinct field elements, alpha i's, okay, there exists some set of field elements, beta i's, such that it says that you can write this as a small sum. This is going to be poly in S comma D of univariates, okay, the product of univariates. So this is going to be Fi1 of Z1, Fis of Zs. Okay, in some sense, okay, an example of a product of univariates is just a monomial. Just write them separately as variable disjoint parts. And if you write this as a sum of monomials, obviously you need too many of them. So this trick basically says that if you relax that condition to say that instead of monomials you want product of univariates, then you can actually do this efficiently. Okay. Okay. Actually, there are no alphas and betas that appear here because I wrote a simpler this thing. But anyway. Okay. So. Okay. So this is the lemma, and let's just see how this lemma will just finish the final step of the proof. What can I erase? No, this I want to reserve for the proof of this guy. Okay. So what do I want to show? I want to show that an expression of this sort can be written as a depth 3 circuit. Okay. So I have L1 to the root D plus Ls to the root D, okay, whole power root D. I want to write this as a depth 3 circuit. Okay. So let's just apply Saxena's lemma where each Zi is going to be Li to the square root D. Okay. This is going to be sum of this is poly in S comma square root D of Fij of Lj to the square root D. Product over all j. Okay, so this is what I have. Now, think of Lj as just a variable. Okay, then what this is just some univariate in the variable Lj. Okay, so f for some univariate polynomial. So if it's a univariate polynomial evaluated on Lj to the root D, this is also a univariate polynomial evaluated on Lj. Okay, where basically just Fij tilde of t, this is nothing but Fij of t to the square root D. I'm just defining a, it's still a univariate anyway. Okay. For now, let's assume that no, instead of proving the result over Q, I am willing to work over complex numbers. Okay, which is algebraically closed, and therefore any univariate polynomial factorizes. So this basically becomes sum of product, where each guy like this will break into a product of the form Lj minus gamma Ljk. Okay. K equals 1 through whatever the degree of this is. Okay. Because each of those guys will just factorize. Okay, and that's it. This is the depth 3 circuit. It's a sum of rather long product of linear polynomials. And that's it. Okay. So yeah, so as you can see, if I could just wanted to describe the proof, I could have done that in probably 10 minutes or something. So it's a very simple this thing. Now, for completeness, all I need to do is just finish the proof of this. Okay, and this is another exercise to sort of show that whenever you're dealing with non-homogeneity, the thing to keep in mind is interpolation. You don't try to compute this polynomial, you first try to shove this polynomial as a coefficient in something else. And then you can try to compute this thing. Okay? So I'll give an alternate proof that Amir Spielka told me about, which would make it easier to convert the circuit which currently uses all these complex numbers in it. But ideally, if you're computing a determinant or something, which is a 0-1 matrix, I mean, you would at least want to use, rational numbers and things like that. So it can still be done, but in order to do that, it's easier to work with this alternate proof. It's very, both proofs are short. Okay, so let's try to do similar to what we did in Benard's trick. Okay, just to be sort of try to use the same notation. Let me just replace this by x, and because I want z to be the variable, the new variable I'm going to add, just to keep it similar. Okay. So now let's look at the polynomial z plus x1, z plus xn. Okay. So what do I know about this? What I know is that this looks like there is a z to the n term. Okay. And coefficient of z to the n minus 1 is the sum of x1 through xn, okay, plus lower order terms. This is what the polynomial looks like. What I want to do is compute the dth power of this polynomial. Okay, so the one thing that we could try to do is basically raise this whole thing power d, and maybe claim that now the coefficient of some monomial here is this power d, but that's not quite true. Okay, so instead of doing that, the reason it's not true is because there's a higher order term z to the n which will start interfering with what you're trying to do. So instead, what you do is you look at this minus z to the n. Okay, and this is z to the n minus 1 times this guy plus other lower order terms. Now I can raise this to the power d. Did I use d here? Yeah, d. So I'll have z to the n minus 1 times d, and this raised to d, and lower order terms will stay lower order terms. Okay? And now we are in the same setting where whatever polynomial I was trying to compute, I've already shoved it as one of the coefficient of one of the powers of z. Now I need to interpolate. Okay? And this is where the there exists thing happen, which means that for every alpha 1 through alpha, I don't know, so I'm going to put r. There are beta 1 through beta r such that x1 to xn to the d, this is equal to beta I. Let's give this a name. Let's call this q of z. Okay, beta I, q of alpha I. Okay, just take sufficiently many evaluations. Some linear combination of that will be this guy. Okay. Now let's see what q of I is going to be. So this guy is going to be something of the form this times that, this minus that power d. So if you just use binomial coefficient, just expand it, think of this as some term plus some other term power d. Okay, and just expand it out. This is going to be beta I times what is this? This is going to be j equals 1 through capital D, something like d choose j. The first term, alpha I plus x1, alpha I plus xn, whole to the d, whole to the j, some z to the, this alpha to the whatever, and there's a sign, whatever, you get the idea. Okay? And yeah, if you just care as this expression, this is nothing but a product of univariates. Everything that's here is a product of univariates. And that's a proof of Saxena's trick here. Okay, and just want to point out that in the process of this, when I created Q, what I eventually want to do is I want to do x1 plus x2 all the way till xs power square root d or something. So the degree of the polynomial that I'm going to end up getting is going to be like s times d. So I need s times d many points to interpolate and so on. Okay. The reason I'm saying this is because I'm trying to tell you that there is a humongous amount of non-homogeneity that has been introduced. Let's exactly see where. I started off with a depth 4 circuit of size something like n to the order square root d. I took an arbitrary circuit, squashed it to depth 4. I had an n to the order square root d size circuit. Okay. Then I converted it to a powering circuit, which gave me a circuit of size n to the order square root d of this form. And The reason it's a circuit of size n to the order square root d is because the sum gates have huge Fanon. The Fanon of the sum gates are the one that is n to the order square root d. The product gates are sort of, they're tame. It's the sum gates that are huge. Which means if I have n1 plus all the way till ls per square root d, you should keep in mind that s is going to be huge when you apply this. S is going to be like n to the order square root d. So the degree of the polynomials that you end up interpolating over is comparable to S. Which means the resulting depth 3 circuit that you're going to get, each of the product of univariates that you have is comparable to S. So this is an example of a depth 3 circuit that computes, say, a polynomial like the determinant. You just plug in the determinant and do the whole thing. But the degree of the depth 3 circuit that you end up getting is something like n to the square root n. Okay, and it's heavily non-homogeneous. Okay, and so this is the full proof to make this work over any, algebraically, work over C. Okay, how much time do I have? Nothing. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so then maybe I'll just say a few words about how you can make this work over any over the base field as well. The point to keep in mind is that I'm eventually trying to compute a polynomial that lies in the base field, but I'm somehow using coefficients in a larger field at this point. So here is a general way in which you can do this. For now, let's first try to get this from complex to the reals. This will have all the ideas, and you can just use this too. So whenever I have some term of the form, some complex number that are here, I'll just write this as some a plus I times b. Okay, and I know that this circuit, whatever circuit I have overall, it's eventually computing my polynomial over the reals. Okay. Now I need to pull out the real part of this expression. I don't know how to do that. So what I'm going to instead do is I'm going to for the moment forget that I was actually a complex number such that I squared was equal to minus 1. Plug in a y. Think of y as a formal variable. Now, whatever expression you have can be written as some univariate of the form t0 plus t1 times y plus t2 times y square, whatever, t capital D. Well, if I think this as a univariate in y, it's some polynomial. But ideally, what I should be doing is I should just take t0 minus t2 plus t4 minus t6 and so on. It's because y in spirit has the relation that y squared is equal to 1. So now this is a univariate polynomial of degree at most my size, whatever the size of the circuit is. Just interpolate and find out every coefficient of ti. Oh, this is like t1. Interpolate and find out each ti, and you manually add things together the way you should. And that will result in a depth 3 circuit, which is actually over the base field. So in fact, this is a very general trick that you can apply, which says that, if you're trying to compute a polynomial over a base field, but you end up using coefficients from an extension which is not too far away, then with a slight blow up in size, you can actually get back to the base field. So the only thing that will require here is that you need to figure out how complex are these complex numbers. You need to know what extension do they lie in. And there, this proof helps because if you look at the univariates, it's just something of the form alpha I plus xi raised to whatever power. Okay? When I eventually plug in things, instead of xi, I'll have li to the square root d or something. So I'm only factoring univariates of this sort. And this is particularly easy if alpha was actually a dth, like a root dth power of something. Then the only sort of complex numbers you'll get here will actually be roots of unities. This requires some, it's a simple check. You can just run through the proof and try to see if I'm allowed to choose my alpha i's any way I want. Then the only sort of complex numbers I would require in the process are roots of unities. And you need roots of unities of order square root d at most. And that is not too large an extension, and the whole process just goes through. Yeah. So I'll just summarize to say that, I still find this reduction extremely counterintuitive. I don't quite understand what the depth 3 circuit for the determinant looks like and so on. And this is really an example of a structural result that came out of just trying to prove stronger lower bounds for general circuits.
Can you give us a hint to get the lower bounds of interpreters?
Yeah.
Can you please say this again?
Okay, so this says that
No, and not the first time, but the second. You revisited this.
uh,
Yeah, same place.
for the symmetric polynomial.
No.
Oh,
When you said that you made a conjecture that you can reduce to depth 3.
uh-huh. So the thing was that this basically says, this unwigderson, the first bullet here, it says that if you want to come up with an efficient circuit for say the determinant over depth 3 or over depth 3 circuits or something, Nissan-Wigderson says that you can't get a depth 3 circuit that has degree at most small d. Or if you compute the n cross n determinant, you can't have degree n. If you look through the proof, the degree of the circuit that you get is n to the root n. It's huge. I mean, and somehow it has this property that all the higher degree terms cancel off, and only the nth sort of homogeneous part survives. So this is not violated. This, of course, it doesn't work over small fields. And the corollary is that you actually now, there's some sanity, at least in the characteristic 0 case, that determinant has a smaller depth 3 circuit than the permanent does.
And also, I wanted to ask, you said that for depth 3 circuits, there are different proofs for finite fields and for characteristic 0.
Yeah.
Can you
So this proof uses the following key idea. It's just that if you take a linear polynomial, it just uses the key point which characteristic 0 fields don't have is that a finite field is finite. So if you take a random evaluation of a linear polynomial, it will take one of q values with probability 1 by q each. Okay, and the way Grigoriev-Karpinski works is that if you have several independent linear polynomials, and if you take a random evaluation, one of them will be evaluated to 0 with high probability. So the product becomes 0. This is not true over characteristic 0, and this is crucial for them. So the way they work is like the measure that they use is the partial derivative matrix, the partial derivative method, but now seen in the context of evaluations. So, and this is the reason why it works over fixed finite fields, but not over.
So, what does this mean? I mean, do we now
Okay, so the
VP versus VNP over characteristic 0 is
okay, I just think that basically characteristic 0 is fine.
no, it's fine, but I'm saying that do we believe now that it's more tractable over characteristic 0 than over finite term?
Okay, maybe I'll.
It's a characteristic 5, so VP versus VNP. No, yeah, of course, so this occurs form, but we have an intuition to say it is sorry, you can say
No, maybe I'll sort of, okay, so now I'll answer this by probably a different, this thing, which is that, I don't think of this as saying that, like the right model to try and prove lower bounds for are depth 3 non-homogeneous. That's not what I'm saying, because I really think that homogeneity is an extremely important, it's a very useful thing to have when you're trying to devise complexity measures. So this is a byproduct of something which I think is more important, which is that depth 5 powering circuits seem to have a lot of structure. And they seem surprisingly powerful, and maybe that is the model to work with because you still have homogeneity and it looks simple enough. But even by there, we've already sort of used the underlying field characteristic because we did Fisher's trick to get there anyway. But I think in general, proving things over characteristic P is hard. There's some like examples the other way, but I just think that we probably understand characteristic 0 much better than characteristic P.
So this is all these things, if you want to find it,
Yeah.
give them extra powers, it's more difficult to do. Rather than you can also use